Today I'm going to demonstrate how to answer the TOEFL speaking question number 3. In question number 3, you're going to have about 45 seconds to read a paragraph right here. The paragraph will have a title, which is right here. Today's title for the question number 3 is optimal foraging, and there will be about 4 to 5 sentences long paragraph describing about what is optimal foraging. In this part, the goal is to define what is optimal foraging. If you remember how to do the fact questions in the reading section, then you're going to look for the keyword, right? So same thing happens a lot of cases scenario in question number 3. There is a keyword, optimal foraging. This approach is known as optimal foraging. Grammatically speaking, this means that you have to read what is this approach. Then you will be looking at the sentence before this one. The sentence before this one is saying, therefore, in order to conserve the energy, many animals behave in this way that minimize energy they expend in foraging process, while at the same time maximizing their nutritional benefits. So that's the sentence that tells us what is the definition of optimal foraging. When you get this sentence definition, then you're going to form a template script that starts from according to the red letter, according to the reading, I mean. Optimal foraging means you don't want to copy and paste. You want to make a paraphrase and summary of what we just read as a definition statement. So I'm going to paraphrase this as using the smallest energy to obtain the greatest amount of nutrition. Means an approach that uses the greatest energy to obtain the greatest amount of nutrition. So I have a really nice, summarized sentence to describe what it means by optimal foraging. In this definition, you might really want to carefully think about what are the keywords, 2 keywords that describes about what is the optimal foraging. Number 1 keyword obviously is the smallest energy. And number 2 keyword will be greatest amount of nutrition. So those 2 will be the keywords. After getting this down, you might want to have a note taking, but the note taking is going to be challenging because the professor speaks about 2 minutes, 1 minute and a half or 2 minutes long. In the real TOEFL exam, it's usually 2 minutes long, but you only have 60 seconds to speak, which means that you have to drop out a lot of information. So please make a concentration on the information gathering on what is example. And what does the professor say about the first keyword, smallest energy? And the greatest amount of nutrition. And then what does the professor say about the result? So that's how you want to organize your note and pretty much fill in the gap of what you need to have over here. Remember, the goal is not to have every information because you're not going to finish on time. The professor speaks about 2 minutes and you only have 60 seconds. If you can speak about twice faster than the professor, why not? But this is not really good way to do it, and you want to actually have important information only. So let's try to listen to this and have some notes taking together.
Now listen to part of a lecture from a biology class.
All right, so I've got a good example of this. There's a bird, a species of crow, that lives near the water, and it feeds on a type of shellfish that has a hard outer shell. In order to eat this shellfish, the bird has to crack open its hard shell. So, When this bird feeds, what it does is it dives down out of the air into shallow water, grabs a shellfish in its mouth, then carries the shellfish up in the air. It then drops the shellfish, lets it fall onto the rocks below. When the shellfish hits the rocks, its shell cracks and splits open, and the bird can eat it. Now, this bird, this crow, doesn't just swoop down, grab the first shellfish it sees, and then fly up to any height and let it fall. Instead, it does two things. First, it carefully selects only the biggest shellfish. That means it's going to get the biggest possible meal for its efforts. Okay? Second, it carries the shellfish up to a specific height, about 5 meters, and drops it from there. If the bird dropped the shellfish from a lower height, it would have to pick it up and drop it too many times in order to break the shell. On the other hand, if the bird carried the shellfish up to a higher altitude, an altitude higher than is necessary to crack the shell, it'd be wasting energy. So, this bird expends just the right amount of energy, no more, no less, that it needs to obtain just the right kind of food.
And you will have about 30 seconds to finish your note. Just the right amount of food for just right amount of energy use. And then you can finish this whole speaking by just simply saying, this example demonstrates the point made in the reading. Now then, my note is ready. All I need to do is I am going to just read this very carefully and clearly and loudly so that the listener can listen and understand very clearly. Now, this is my demonstration of this speech. Begin speaking now. Beep. According to the reading, optimal foraging means an approach that uses the smallest energy to obtain the greatest amount of nutrition. And the professor has an example to explain this concept. The professor talks about the crow bird foraging for shellfish. The crow bird carries the shellfish to the specific height, which is about 5 meters. If the crow bird picks it up too low, then they would have to fly it again. If they go too high in the altitude, then they're wasting the energy. Also, the crow bird carefully selects the biggest shellfish in the beach so that the crow birds are using just right amount of energy to get just right amount of food. This example demonstrates the point made in the reading. Okay, I used about 57 seconds for my speech. I could have spoken a little bit slower, I think. But then if you have all the information on what is example and the keyword number 1, keyword number 2, and result, then your speaking grade will be very nice.